Hello and welcome back to the Walk in the Talk podcast with your hosts Kyle Thain and Ned Perry. Today we're talking about a topic that I am super passionate about, and this is one of my life topics, I guess you could say, in that it's something that I struggle with constantly, and it's something that has been a big thorn in my side my entire life. It's something that I'm struggling with now, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know what to do about it. It's just walking the talk. Today we're talking about making idols. You want to go ahead and talk a little bit about that?
Certainly. Idols are anything that comes between you and God. So whatever it is that's consuming most of your time and your thoughts and your energy, if it's not God, then it very easily could become an idol. So one of the most obvious things is to identify an idol is how are you spending your money? And God does ask for 10% of everything that we earn, and it's a good practice and a good discipline for that, but I don't think the minimum should be the goal. I think our goal should be to be more generous than just the requisite 10%, maybe 12 or 15 or more, as God has blessed you and enabled you to become a financially responsible human being. One of the idols early on in my life was a trading card game, and it was an idol both in the consumption of my treasures and my time. So it's a very dangerous thing, but it's of itself, it is not evil and it's not wrong. It's just mismanaging my resources that made it an idol.
Yeah, and that's a big piece, is that anything, even if it's innocent or simple, can become an idol. Even good things can become idols. And you bring up the trading card game, and I've been there too. I used to collect Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and actually my most recent idol was back in last year. I began sports card collecting, and I got tricked into the loop to the gambling that is sports card collecting, because what you do is you buy a pack of cards in hopes that you pull a big one that's worth something, and most of the time you don't, and you'll spend $20 on a box of cards and get nothing. And then it's just like, maybe it's in the next box, that's where I'm gonna get that LeBron James card that I'm looking for, and it keeps, and then but the evil there is that you eventually get something, maybe it's worth like $10, and you're like, oh, I almost made my money back. But it became an idol for me because it was taking my resources, it was taking my time. I was spending my excess time Googling the value of different cards, and I was sorting and organizing. It was directly in competition with my time with God, and it became a big idol. And I heard a pastor by the name of Paul Washer give a message around this, and he said, what you spend most your time thinking about is your God. It's what you're worshiping. You become like what you worship. And if you are spending most of your time thinking about video games or TV or a sports team or your hobby, it's your idol. He gave the example, he loves bow hunting. And he gave the example of himself going over to London to do a sermon. And he bought himself an English longbow when he was over there. And he was really excited to bring it back to the States. And he told himself, I'm going to be the first person to get a deer with an English longbow. And he painted this picture. He said, here I was sitting under cover, and the morning dew had fallen fresh upon the grass, and the sun was just shining just right. And he said, it's as if a small voice came and told me, behold, this is Paul Washer's God, his bow, because it was taking up all his time and energy. Something so simple became his idol. And this is a pastor we're talking about, someone who's deeply invested in his faith. And so anything that gets in between you and God is an idol. And it's one of life's most difficult challenges, is to take an honest look at your priorities and reshuffle them around so God is first.
Right. Now, along with tithing financially, this one is incredibly difficult. So don't think that it's going to be an easy lifestyle change, but I think it's important to make strides toward tithing your time, because time is the most valuable commodity that any of us have. Once it's spent, it's gone forever. There's
Right.
no getting any more of it than we already have. So 10% of your day is 2 hours and 24 minutes. That's a big commitment, but it is possible, at least in my particular occupation, to invite God into the workplace, whether it's just praying silently while you're doing your normal activities, or maybe quietly singing a song of praise, or even just taking 10 minutes to say a prayer before you start eating on your lunch break. There are numerous opportunities to bring God into your daily life and not just keep him at the beginning of the day or the end of the day sort of thing, or just a Sunday morning kind of a thing. God is always with us wherever we go and whatever we are doing. So it is possible to make worship a part of our daily lives.
And that's such a practical tip. And I think people, and especially me, I like action steps. I like concrete systems. And thinking of that time, tithing as 10% of my day, 2 hours and 24 minutes. If you think about on the face value, it's like, wow, that's a lot of time. But if you have an iPhone or a smartphone and you have an app on there called Screen Time, I guarantee you that you're probably pushing more than that just looking at your phone. And I am guilty of that. And so, and it doesn't have to be all at once, but if you get up in the morning and do 30 minutes of Bible reading and then pray on the way to work and maybe listen to some worship music on the way to work, or like Ned was saying, pray before lunch, have some Bible time in the evening, or have a discussion with a friend about God or your faith or whatever. I mean, there's many different ways that we can do that, but thinking of tithing my time in that way, and in reality, tithing is putting faith in God, whether it's money or time. If you think about tithing your money, it's saying that's a direct act of faith, because you're saying, okay, God, I'm trusting that I'm going to give this to you. It's yours anyway. You blessed me with this money, this 10% or more. I'm giving it back to you. It's yours. But you're having faith that you doing that God's got this, and he has a plan for you, and it's gonna work out, because depending on how much money you make, and you put that 10% and you look at that number, you go, ooh, that's a considerable chunk of change. And you might be a financial person, you might think, well, what if I invested that? Ooh, or what if I saved it in an account with an increase? And it's like, we have to think differently, because when you're tithing, you are investing. You're investing in your faith. You're investing in your relationship with God, and that's one way of putting God first, is tithing both your time and money. And Jesus tells us to store up for ourselves treasures in heaven and not here on earth, where moths and rust can destroy. So I remember being 9 years old and thumbing through my Pokemon cards and thinking this very thought. I said, what am I doing? I'm going to die one day and these are going to be worthless. And so I was 9 when I thought that. So that just gives you some insight into like how deep I think sometimes. As a 9-year-old, I was thinking about eternity and death and what does this all mean? But, we can store up all these treasures, whether it be cards or money or things, items, cars, clothes. We're all going to die. If you're watching this, you will die one day. We all die. And we don't get to take any of this with us. And so everything that we're involved in our life can become an idol, no matter what it is. And so it's important to take an honest look at our time and our lives and ask ourselves, is God first? Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. And Jesus was talking about the daily needs, food, clothes. God knows what you need even before you ask. And it's a big step of faith, and it's a big, it's what we're required to do. We're commanded to seek first the kingdom of God. We're commanded to not worry, but to pray continually, and we'll have the peace that surpasses all of understanding. And so it's backwards thinking as Jesus preaches his Beatitudes, and as he preaches the Sermon on the Mount. Everything of the kingdom of heaven is flipped upside down from the kingdom of earth. The first will become the last, and we have the meek that will inherit the earth. And so it's it's you have to flip your mind around a little bit, because most of the world seeks after worldly things, but we as Christians, we're called to seek heavenly things and not make idols out of God's creation.
And at the end of your life, when you're looking back and considering all that has happened, you will realize the most valuable things weren't things at all. It was the time you spent with the people that you love. And they need you. They need your time. They need to know about Jesus, and they need to know what it is that you have that gives you the confidence and the hope that even though life is a struggle, it's not the worst thing, because after this life, something better is waiting for us.
That's right. And as Christians, that's what gives us our hope. And it's a remembering that we are foreigners here in this land. This is not our final destination. And having that kingdom mindset about everything helps me to have tremendous peace. I want to give another example of me idolizing something. And so, Christ tells us to take our cross and follow him, to die to our to lose our lives, to die to our old selves. And so I used to be an avid gamer, and I mean all the time, every day, multiple hours a day. Now, before I had kids, it didn't impact my life that in a big way, because after work, I'd come home, play video games. It wasn't that big of a deal. When I had kids, though, as soon as I had kids, it started being a struggle. I tried to fit video games in certain times, and it wasn't working out. And I found in my life that when I am struggling to make something work, or I keep running into walls with whatever it is, it's God's way of telling me, hey man, it's time to move on from this. And the thing is, there's somewhere in the New Testament, and I don't have it, but Paul is talking in one of his letters about not causing your brother to stumble. And so I have people in my life that can play video games and it doesn't become an idol. They can turn on the game system, play for a while. There's Ned right there. You see, it's some people can play games, but I can't. It becomes an idol to me. Some people can have a couple drinks of wine and not be a problem. Some people can't. It becomes an idol, or because alcoholism takes over. And so not everything is an idol to everyone. For me, I know that me picking up my cross and dying to my old life, I cannot make video games an active part of my daily existence or normal life structure, because it will inevitably take over. It just will. I know it. No matter how many times I try, it always does. Now, that doesn't mean I can't play a game with a friend from time to time, or do a fun social event and we play a little bit of Mario Kart or something. But if I accept video games into my life in a normal way, it will take over. I believe it's one of the ways that Satan tries to attack me. I always say, well, I can probably make it work this time. It's the oldest lie in the book. Jesus, when Satan in the Garden of Eden said, well, did God really say? So he's always, well, you can probably do video games, or one drink won't hurt, or whatever your vices are. We are called to give them up, to follow Christ. So that's my personal one, and it stinks, because I love playing video games, and it used to be such a big part of my life. But I've realized that that's just not something that I can do regularly, because it is a problem for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that helped with my struggle regarding video games was I limited myself to making it a social thing. I do not play one-player games anymore, and I do not ever play just by myself. If I have company, or if I'm going to visit my cousin Joe, for example, we'll sit down, we'll play something for a couple of hours, but I don't allow myself to do it on my own. And that helps put a limit on the time that I spend doing it, because I'm only going to do it as long as this friend is visiting or I'm at their house.
That's wise, and it comes down to self-control, because you could very easily fall into that same trap, and so that's a thing, is putting up different barriers or setting different limits for yourself, whatever that thing might be. So if you have something in your life that when you take an honest assessment of your life and your priorities, if there's something in your life that you love but it's an idol, maybe consider putting limitations on it. That way it can not become an idol. Maybe because we are allowed, we don't have to be monks living in monasteries. We are allowed to enjoy God's creation. The problem is when we enjoy the creation more than the creator. That's when it becomes a problem. And so that's really where the issue lies. And so what I would say to you, whoever's watching this, is to list out and kind of take an honest assessment, an evaluation of how you're spending your time on a regular day or week, and where does God fit in? Are you trying to squeeze God in with the excess, or are you starting with God and putting other things around that? And that's really where the practical things come in, is taking that hard look at how you're spending your time. Because most of us probably think, well, I don't have 2 hours to read my Bible or to pray. You probably do, and I'm saying that from experience, because if I stop mindlessly watching YouTube videos or thumbing through Facebook or whatever, magically I have more time. so it's just do assessment of your time spent, and try to figure out how you can reorient it to put God first, and see what happens. Watch the blessings come, and see how God works in your life.
Probably the most dangerous idol in my life was daydreaming, because it's such an easy thing to do, and it can consume so much of your time when you're thinking about this thing, whatever it may be, owning a particular car or being involved in a relationship or whatever that particular dream of yours is. It's okay to dream, but when you let that consume so much of your thoughts and your time, then it does get in the way of God. And so I still allow myself to daydream every once in a while, but I've made a conscious effort to put more of my attention into silent prayer, because idle hands, as the saying goes, are the devil's playground. So an idle mind is even more dangerous, and it's important to really take hold of your thoughts and rein them in, and try and focus on heavenly things more than earthly things.
That's very wise, and you're so right about daydreaming. You're also stealing time from now, and there's a reason why the present is called the present. It's because it's a gift. If you're living in the past, you can't change it, and if you're living in the future, well, that's not here yet, and you're not guaranteed it. But it is one of the most hard things to do, to be in the moment. When I am playing with my 2 young boys, I often catch myself thinking about the past or the future and realizing, what am I doing? I've got these 2 beautiful boys in front of me that I should be playing with and delighting in, but I'm thinking about something that hasn't even happened yet. And so it's almost like I gotta pinch myself every once in a while and go, stop. Get back right now. Get back to right now, because that's the only time that we have that we can actually impact. You can't change the past, or you can't do anything about the future. So living in the moment, and you're so right, daydreaming can become an idol. Thinking, lamenting on the past, or reliving the glory days in your mind can be an idol, or hoping for the future, all those things. And that's, again, having again, Christ tells us, don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself. There's enough worries for tomorrow. Why don't you just worry about today? And that's such a wise, that's a wise piece of advice. Focus on today. And again, look at what you're spending most of your time thinking about. How can you make that God? How can you make that Christ? How can you make that serving others? Or, how do we shift that way? So think about that in your life, and try to see if you can make those changes. All right, well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you for watching, and thanks for watching the Walking the Talk podcast. We'll see you next time.
Blessings and peace.